This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined the Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. What's up, everybody? How are you guys doing? Are you guys handling the fun, educational planes of talking about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation on the internet? I know that it's nothing but riveting, intellectually stimulating conversations that are reminiscent of conversations had between some of the greatest thinkers of our planet. You know, people like Plato, Socrates, Socrates. You know, I know it's like when you go online and you debate the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, it is like football watching Plato and Socrates go at it. You know, it's like watching intellectual titans of their time. You know, it is such a wild era we get to live through, where we get to see such intellectual titans, such experienced geniuses on the internet debate such a topic like Shedeur Sanders versus Fernando Mendoza, or Fernando Mendoza versus Dante Moore versus Shedeur Sanders. I know it is nothing but riveting, intellectually stimulating conversations that restore your faith in humanity, because that's what my experience has been on the internet. That being said, let's look at the hot takes of the week in the comment section and let's see what y'all been saying. You know, I'm ready to get my brain stimulated with all the genius that I'm about to hear. And honest to God, I picked some pretty good hot takes. I didn't really go like the crazy take selection. I wanted to go with like people who are saying things that I can actually have a conversation about. But let's jump into it, man. Shock Radio says this: I think what happened yesterday against the Bears, plus the other games this season involving both rookie quarterbacks drafted, will go a long way in determining what the Browns do or choose to do with their first pick. It feels fairly safe to predict that the Browns will be drafting a quarterback, since the limitations of the ones currently on the roster do not elevate the play on the field in a consistent manner. I would make the argument that the Browns' decision is and has always been, when it comes to quarterback in this draft class, been more about their draft position than anything that they see from these rookies this year. I do not believe the Browns went into this draft, went into the 2025 draft, hoping to take themselves out of the 2026 draft. I think they drafted some players to see what it was, what they could get. And I think the Browns overall have a philosophy with quarterback that is a position. And like, you don't have to take my word for it. Just watch how the Browns operate and pay attention to how they've operated. But the Browns are one of these teams in NFL that are okay taking flyers on quarterbacks because they feel like quarterbacks can return their value if they don't work out. So they're more than likely to give opportunities than not. Here's what I mean about that, right? The Browns trade a 5th-round pick for Kenny Pickett. They bring Kenny Pickett into camp. They trade him for a 5th-round pick. Not the first time the Cleveland Browns have done this, right? The DTR was a part of that same trade for Kenny Pickett. If we go back, Josh Dobbs, they traded him for a 5th-round selection. They hung on to Tyler Huntley, hoping that they could trade Tyler Huntley for a selection. Joe Flacco comes in, brings him in, doesn't work out, sits on their bench. They trade him for a 5th-round pick. The Browns have a way of thinking about quarterback that says, hey, we could take a flyer, But since these are quarterbacks, and since quarterbacks are hot commodities, we can get our money back for these quarterbacks more easily than if we took a flyer on another position, which is why the Browns, of all the positions on their roster, are more likely to take a flyer on a quarterback because they think that position can return its value even if it doesn't work out for you, which has proven to be somewhat true for the Cleveland Browns. So that was, I think, their philosophy. Well, we'll take a flyer on a couple quarterbacks. We seem to like this Dylan Gabriel guy. Shador sitting around here in the fifth. Let's see what happens. Then they saw what happens, and they were like, okay, well, didn't change my mind, so we're going to take a quarterback. Maybe if one of these quarterbacks broke out early in the season and changed the Browns' win-loss picture dramatically, then we're talking about something different. But again, it goes back to the base of the conversation. The Browns quarterback decision, and I've said this since the beginning of the season, by the way, right? You go back and hear me at the beginning of the season. The Browns' decision on taking a quarterback has much less to do about seeing what you got in these two and much more to do about where they're going to be selecting in the draft next year. If the Browns have an opportunity to take one of these two quarterbacks, they will take them. And it wouldn't matter if Dylan put up a better stat line. It wouldn't have mattered if Shador put up a better stat line. That is just what they were going to do because that was what the plan was. The only way that was going to change is that the Browns were never going to be in position to take a quarterback because they did not have the draft selection to take a quarterback. So I agree with you halfway. Yeah, I think the Browns are taking a quarterback. I don't think their evaluation of these quarterbacks this year is really, I don't think them drafting a quarterback is the reflection of what these quarterbacks have put on tape that a lot of people are going to make it out to be. I think these two things are independent for the most part. Outside of the win-loss record, right? Like that matters because that determines draft position. But thank you, Shocker Radio, for that comment. We go to a YouTube member. Shout out to the members, man. Big shout out to the members. Basher, who says the team loaded up for Baker, then Watson time has aged. Watson time has aged the roster. Watson failed, and we never were able to find the next guy. And the team got old. We had a great draft in 25. Hopefully we can use that formula again. Ventrone can go. Both Barry and Kevin should be retained. I'm optimistic about the future, and I had zero expectations for this season. QB, if there's one at our position, we take him. Rest of the picks and free agency should be spent on offense, especially on the line. So the only part about, I think, this entire comment that's even slightly controversial is the Kevin should be retained part of it. My thing is this. The Browns have to have an answer for, one, why was the offense so terrible for the last 2 years? Like, the offense did not feel like it was better than the sum of its parts. It felt like it was worse than the sum of its parts. And how exactly is what your plan to go forward going to make that offense better? The difficult part for Kevin Stefanski is this. I don't know what the answer is for him, right? Like, I don't know how you can run it back with Kevin and have a legitimate answer as to why it is that the offense can be better. Because again, we can blame this on the fact that he doesn't have the personnel, and I think that's something to do with it. But I watched this team, and I don't think that they're putting up a fight that's better than the sum of their parts, right? If I thought that were the case, I'd be screaming, keep Kevin. But that's not where we are. I think this offense is worse than it should be, even when you put in what the roster is for this offense right now. Like, I felt like we should be a better offense over the last 2 years. And that's something that somebody has to answer for. And if it's not Kevin, well, who is it? Because I can't put this all on a wide receiver coach. Are we going to fire another offensive line coach? Are we going to fire another offensive coordinator? Like, I just feel like Kevin's out of moves here with this offense. And I think the most damning thing has been the degradation of the run game, which is what he really bet on. And I think that's what the part that I don't think Kevin can recover from. This offseason, the marketing message around the team, from the players to the leaders in the locker room to Kevin himself, was we're going to go back to Cleveland Browns football, the same type of football they played in 2020. We're going to have a ground and pound offense. We're going to work the trenches, and we're going to be a style of what we were in 2020. The Browns' run game being as pathetic as it is, from a schematic standpoint, from a run game creativity standpoint, is the sword that I think pierces him, right? Like, I think that's what gets Kevin. The lack of evolution in the run game specifically. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe Kevin is good enough to figure this out and I'm overreacting to the last couple of years. But that's the part that I have a hard time grasping with, is like, how can I believe this is going to be better structurally when I've had so many issues with how this offense has been structured? And the only constant at this point is Kevin. That's the only thing, right? You know, I try not to be fire the coach guy whenever their team does something I don't like, right? You guys know me well enough to know I'm not a super reactionary person. But, you know, I think the reasons why I'm not really gung-ho about retaining Kevin, I think are pretty fair at the end of the day. And these are questions that need to be answered in some way, shape, or form this offseason, whether it be by hiring a new head coach or whether it be by, you know, retaining Kevin and doing, like, you got to find an answer there for some way, somehow. Next hot take comes from Scott, who says, I think with Deep Podesta gone, it'd be one less voice to contend with. The Deshaun Watson trade really derailed every aspect of this franchise. Could you imagine having Baker, all those first-round picks the past few years? I definitely think the DG is Shedeur Sanders drafting Reeks, though. I'm not sure if what was going on there. We already had Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. Again, I think the Browns' plan this year at quarterback was just throw a bunch of shit at the wall, see if something sticks. If it sticks, then roll with it. If it didn't, then draft the quarterback in 2026. Also, you know, it's easy to try to make a judgment on a coaching staff or on a front office, especially based on what they're doing with late round picks. But it doesn't really give you an accurate assessment. I think the one example I can pull is how the Bills handled Nathan Peterman in 2017. Like, they benched Tyrod Taylor to play Nathan Peterman, and Nathan Peterman was terrible. That was Sean McVay. Now, Brandon Beane didn't draft Nathan Peterman. That was the previous GM. But Brandon Beane was certainly part of the decision to play Nathan Peterman over Tyrod. And you could have said, if you were a Bills fan at that time, look, how they handled this Nathan Peterman thing makes me extremely nervous about drafting a developmental quarterback like Josh Allen at the time. Now, they ended up getting their shit together for Josh Allen. But, you know, if you were judging off the whole Nate Peterman thing, you would have been terrified. You know, so I try not to take too much from whatever happened with this not Darius Garland, with this, oh my goodness, with this Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders thing, because ultimately how they're going to have a plan for a third round pick and a fifth round pick is not their plan for a first round pick. And I think that needs to be kind of emphasized. As far as like Baker with all those first round picks, I think you would be a competitive team with Baker Mayfield and those first round picks. But I think we're also forgetting the premise of why the Browns moved on from Baker Mayfield. And look, the move itself to get Deshaun Watson ended up being one of the most wrong decisions the Cleveland Browns have ever made. The motivation behind it has proven to be pretty solid, right? Like, the motivation was Baker Mayfield is not good enough or consistent enough to get you through the AFC and get you to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl, more importantly, right? Baker has shown a lot over the last few years. He has not demonstrated that he's good enough to get to a Super Bowl with or win a Super Bowl with. If we're proven wrong this year, we'll see. But, you know, it looks like Baker is still struggling with consistency. It looks like Baker is still having those hot and cold moments. And those were the things that kind of made you feel nervous about having Baker Mayfield as your quarterback going up against Lamar Jackson, going up against Joe Burrow, especially like, yeah, we could talk about what this team would look like if they had the draft picks with Baker Mayfield, but also what would this team look like if they were spending number 1 overall pick extension money on Baker Mayfield? Not something that gets brought up a lot. So I'm not sure if I think this team would be like, have won a Super Bowl or something with Baker, but I do think they would be a more competitive, more fun team to watch than they are today, obviously. But the next comment is from Eric Watts, but we'll get to Eric Watts in just a second. Got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. All right, so Eric J. Watts says, how are they going to win next year with 20 to 30 rookie players on the team? Need 5 to 8 O-line cats. This includes starters and backups. I want them to win next year, but I don't see it. They are going to be a young team. There is no way around it. Like, that's just going to be true. They're going to be a young team. There's no way around it, especially on offense, right? They're probably starting a rookie wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy's going to be back. I know. But Jerry Jeudy's going to be back. Offensive line-wise, they're probably bringing back Wyatt. Maybe another offensive lineman. Maybe they sign one in free agency. They'll probably be starting one rookie on the offensive line, but maybe 2 people who are inexperienced on the line, like maybe Zach Zinter becomes a starter next year. They will have youth that they have to deal with on this team. It's not going to be as extreme as you might have put it out there to be, but they're going to have youth to deal with, and there's really no way around it. I think the Browns' hope is we have youth on offense, but also with that youth, explosion, right? Maybe you're not the most consistent offense in the world because, with a young offense, you're going to get pre-snap penalties. You're going to get post-snap. You're going to get a lot of penalties with the young team, right, on offense. But in between those drives that are kind of killed by penalties, you have some explosive drives, and that is enough offense to get you to a point to where you can win games with a veteran defensive unit behind them. I think that would be the Browns' strategy. Yeah, we're going to be young on offense, but we're also hoping to be more explosive on offense. And yeah, we're going to try to protect our youth on offense by leaning on our experience on defense. The next question comes from Freddie Black, who says, I don't think I saw one play where the Bears didn't have 8 within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So their game plan was 8 in the box, stuff to run if it's a pass, bracket 44. I don't think that was their game plan, but here's the thing about why there are so many players in the box whenever you watch a Cleveland Browns game. You might say to yourself, oh, the Bears aren't afraid of the Browns throwing the ball deep. And when it was Dylan Gabriel, it was real easy for people to fall for that narrative of like, oh, the Browns are dealing with these 8-man boxes because Dylan can't stretch the field. But I didn't really think that was why that was happening. The Browns are dealing with these 8-man boxes by design. Because if you look at how the Browns align on run plays, especially, they're usually in 12P, and they're usually in a tight, condensed kind of split on offense, which means that the offense is going to be bunched up and that there's going to be 2 tight ends off the ball or one on the line, one off, right? And then the wide receivers are even going to be closer to the tight ends. What that does is that brings 5 people in the box for the offensive line, obviously. And then you're adding 2 more people in the box for the tight ends, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then there's 1 person in the box to account for the running back. 8 people in the box. See, the Browns are forcing these teams into stacked boxes, and what their hope was and what their hope has been from the beginning of the season is that they can power their way through those boxes and then force teams to stay in those boxes and then throw over those boxes. Obviously, they have not been successful enough at powering through those boxes for that strategy to look good. So all people see on Sundays is look at the 8-man boxes. But the 8-man boxes are there because we have 5 guys on the line, 2 guys on the tight end, 2 tight ends also on the line of scrimmage, right? So we're already at 7, and a running back in the backfield. That's 8. They're just accounting for the personnel that's there. They're not going, well, they are going into the game understanding that they're going to be in a lot of 8-man boxes. If you're playing the Browns offense, you understand that that's what they're going to want to be in, but they're fine with that compromise, right? They're like completely okay with it, right? And then the reason you sometimes see 9 is because the Browns sometimes will roll a wide receiver kind of into that box area. But that's why you're seeing it. That's why the Browns are always dealing with 8, 9-man boxes. It's because of how they choose to run the ball. And this is the thing that drives me crazy about how the Browns run the football. We don't run the ball from enough different unique formations for the run game to have any kind of versatility to it. Every time the Browns run the ball, it's the same like 5 run plays that they like to lean on. And it's the same personnel packages that they like to lean on. They have no comfort running out of 11P. They can't run out the gun from 11P. And that means that there's no, I know people hate shotgun runs and all this, and the internet and people online have turned you against it, but that kind of variety is important for a reason. Because every time the Browns go out there and they come out in these heavy ass packages, it's just a red light blinking that the Browns are going to run the ball. And I think that's the biggest issue why they're dealing with these boxes is because they design the offense in a way that invites those boxes. It's not even the Bears saying we don't respect your offense. We're going to put guys in the box. It's not like the Browns are spreading that shit out and they're just putting 8 in the box. The Browns are giving them what they want because they feel like that's their strength and they just don't have any strengths on offense. Angelo Loria says, you don't have to have a perfect situation for a quarterback when you draft one, but you do have to have at least a defensive offensive line. If you don't have good wide receivers and running backs, your quarterback won't be very successful, but he won't get killed. Tim Couch is a good example of this. The O-line is the first priority that a quarterback is a valuable asset to. Many hits, devastating. You need the insurance of a decent offensive line. I would agree that you need to do something about the offensive line. Like, I'm not sitting here like, oh, no, draft the quarterback and he's going to make Corn Lucas fucking amazing, right? Like, you do need to address the offensive line, but that doesn't have to be by sacrificing your opportunity to go after a quarterback. You can sufficiently address offensive line while also using the Browns' other assets to get a quarterback, to get some wide receivers. I don't think it's an either or situation. I have a video coming out on Sunday that I think fully addresses that. But thank you for the comment there. The next one is from Sunshine, who says this: after listening to your analysis of why the Browns should take a quarterback, makes sense. I am a Shedeur fan. However, I'm realistic too. Some of the situations are not for everybody, and I want him to be successful, as well as with all these players. There is a connection with the quarterback, Coach Musgrave. So I feel like the Browns will take him in GG. Well, actually, the quarterback coach has a connection with Mendoza. The offensive coordinator, no, the Browns don't have a connection with Moore other than Kevin's really tight with Dan Lanning. Will be the backup if they trade 12. I'm okay with that. Oh, yeah, Dylan Gabriel has a connection with Dante Moore. That makes sense. Bottom line is, it's a business. You have to do what's best for your business regardless. Some fans need to take the feelings out and look at it realistically. New sub, great show. Appreciate that, right? Appreciate that. And this goes to show you that not all Sanders fans are the most ridiculous folks that you're dealing with online, right? Like, as much as we joke, I've had plenty of reasonable conversations with people who, their priority isn't the Cleveland Browns, but they do want to see Shedeur succeed. And I think there's some overlap here, but there might not be eternal overlap there in the way that some people were hoping. But yeah, I think if you're Shedeur, you just got to figure out how to keep getting your head above water at this part of your career, because it's tough trying to break into the league when you don't have that draft status behind you, especially at the quarterback position. I think what's best for Shedeur is just to keep doing what he's been doing here in Cleveland and not letting his specific situation mess up his work, right? Like just keep focusing on that. But appreciate you, Sunshine, for having a realistic, well, not, I don't want to say realistic, but a reasonable response to somebody suggesting that the Browns might, go draft the quarterback, because I think that's also an important thing to highlight, is that there are folks who are perfectly reasonable about this. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.